Women have the power to transform this world. We can end crime and violence if we all agree to do one thing: share. Let's share our wisdom, share our time, share our talents, share our finances, but most of all, let's share our love. This is the Female Solution.
Good evening, and welcome to this edition of the On Air Daily News Hour. This is our opportunity to share with you some of the fascinating stories that we and our news affiliates are able to bring to you that are sometimes giving you a different perspective of the world. Today, we've got the publisher of the South Side Drive newspaper, Yvette Moyo. And she has presented a very exciting, historic, commemorative edition of Reverend Jesse Jackson. Now, of course, we know that this is a man who's been widely celebrated and definitely will be deeply missed. But we're going to get a chance to take a look at the work that went into this process of creating this commemorative edition and the history that must be preserved, because there are so many stories about the life and times of Reverend Jesse Jackson that it could very easily, if we're not keeping hold of what is told, we could very easily see this life distorted. So we're going to come right back and bring to you the publisher of South Side Drive, Yvette Moyo, after we take this short break, and we want to greet our global family joining us from all across the world. And we'll be right back. So stay with us.
We are global transformers, changing the world from the way it is to the way it should be. We are one. Wherever we live on this earth, we are one human family. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to extend a greeting to all the members of our family, whenever and wherever you may be listening around the world. To our family in China, Ni Hao. In India, Namaste. In Japan, Konnichiwa. In Korea, Annyeonghaseyo. In Russia, Здравствуйте. In Germany, Guten Tag. In Poland, Dzień dobry. In France, Bonjour. In Spain, Hola. In Italy, Ciao. In Egypt, Ahlan wa sahlan. In Ghana, Akwaba. In Nigeria, Peleo. In South Africa, Sawubona. In Senegal, Nangadef. In Kenya, Jambo. In Israel, Shalom. In Pakistan, Afghanistan, Palestine, and Saudi Arabia, Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, and may peace be upon you all. Join us live on the On Air Radio Network. Call 727-731-5192. We want to talk to you.
Yes, we do want to talk to you, and we want you to talk to us too. And today we are talking to Southside Drive publisher Yvette Moyo. And this has been a week, and of course, as we covered in the on-air daily news, this has been a week of politics. And we've had many of the winners of the primary election to come to the Rainbow Push, the national organization headed by Reverend Jesse L. Jackson for so many years here in Chicago, and many who came pledged that they were going to make sure that they complied with the wishes of the people who gave them a vote of confidence in this recent primary election. And we know that Reverend Jesse Jackson this year was not present in his usual spot at the annual remembrance of Bloody Sunday, that civil rights movement, that very momentous occasion when hundreds of marchers on the bridge from Selma to Montgomery were beaten so badly it made national news and led to the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So much of his legacy has to do with the changing of the political climate in America and the changing of power, shifting it to the hands of so many of us who got the right to vote as a result of the protests and the boycotts and the sit-ins. But we need to remember that, and we need to make sure those who did not live through that are aware of that history. So today we're going to take a look at a commemorative edition on the life of Reverend Jesse Jackson as presented in the Southside Drive. And we want to welcome to our show today, this evening, publisher Yvette Moyo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I hope that our managing editor, Emma Young, can join us. But I really want to first commend you on the job you've been doing for so many years. Your commitment and dedication is unparalleled, and I just wish you the very best in the future. And I'm so grateful that you thought of it.
Well, coming from the esteemed Yvette Moyo, that means so much. So thank you for those words of encouragement. And of course, you have always been a leader and an example for success in entrepreneurship and publishing and community work. And so I am grateful to be in your presence tonight. And thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you. Well, that is a great acknowledgement of our work that you've given us to have us on the show. Emma Young, as I said, our managing editor. I hope that she can drop in with us before the show is over, because a lot of the credit and admiration goes to Emma for working with Southside Drive magazine for these last 6 years. We're both seasoned professionals in the area of media, and I in most advertising advertising. But we knew together, and she had a career in advertising as well on the creative side, and we just felt there was such a gap in terms of what people had to consume, that we needed another magazine. We needed a magazine in Chicago to tell our story. So when the passing of Reverend Jack, came to our attention, not only did we have to pause to just think about this man who made such an impact internationally, we also had to talk to each other about, as publishers, what can we contribute? And we were working on our issue of the magazine, and it was just apparent to us that we needed to devote a commemorative issue, something that people would have in their hand and could have as a collector's item for years to come, and not have to try to find the words to explain who Reverend Jesse Jackson was, to actually present something in print to a grandchild or to a peer or someone just moving to the city, or someone who doesn't really understand the word civil rights. So we put in the time, we stopped everything that we were doing to look at what we had done in the past on the Reverend, and to put that together with some new articles so that we would inform people in a way they had never ever been about the man and his contribution.
Well, yeah, I had an opportunity to present this commemorative edition to some young people that are in my midst, some that are in their 20s and have not lived through all of these eras of protests, of confrontation, even of violence in the quest to make this nation a nation of equality and fairness and justice. And so it's come to my attention that they really don't teach this in school of any depth. They give us 28 days out the whole year to mention that we're Black, and things happened, and there was slavery, and then there was a civil war, and then there was civil rights, and there was freedom, and they tell all that within about 7 days, and then that's the end of our story. So a lot of young people have no clue as to the contemporary leaders that are among us and how their works changed our reality. Our generation that grew up in the 60s, children, when a lot of these things happened, now we're reaping the benefits of the struggle of those who came before us. But our children and grandchildren, they don't have a clue. So what was it like doing the research and even going back into the archives and the files and seeing some of those old pictures, those old images, and those old stories from back in the day, back in the breadbasket days, in the beginnings?
Stories were being shared, not only between Emma and myself, but we reached out to people that we knew, who knew the Reverend, to add a different perspective together, some things we had already published, because that's the truth. And as you were mentioning at the beginning of the show, people will rework, reword, recreate this person if there's no proof in real time with people's own stories about what happened. Um, it'll be manipulated, and the truth will never be known. And so this was an issue to share truth, number one. Certainly, we didn't have enough pages, and there are many books on the Reverend Jackson that I recommend people would go pick up now. But this in magazine format is very unique in that it is can give you in a nutshell what happened over 60 years of service, and what does 60 years of service look like? What were the challenges, boards? What are the things that, and for looking back to this, what have we lost? What have we lost? And what does still leave us? That sense of family, right? That sense of family and dependency and coalition, which is one of the things that seems like a lot of families can't tell those kinds of stories anymore, with 5 children, all set something huge in continuum, but not necessarily attempting to recreate who he was. We've got all these opportunities for these young children, to the Jacksons, young because now I'm to go out and really, really make a difference. And that's legacy. So we were blown away by that. We were challenged because the elections were coming in, and we weren't wishing to make endorsements or anything, but the endorsements of the family, of the family, fantastic, wonderful family that allowed this to do his work.
Yes. Well, that's one of the things that struck me early on. I know that Mrs. Jackson certainly kind of kept her family out of the limelight when the children were younger, and now everybody is very public, other than maybe the youngest two that's kind of not so much in the public eye, but everybody else has stepped into the limelight, either in politics or in media. And one of the things that you realize is that everybody's got their own personality. Every family, every child experiences their parents differently because of the era that they grew up in, the birth order and the relationships and all of that. But yet all of them emerge as very strong personalities. And even the article that you wrote on the siblings. Of course, it's an inside look at a family and how they handle the pressures of being under the microscope all those years. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about maybe some of the things that you all discovered that you didn't know, and many things that we assume, and maybe we can learn some things for how you handle the pressures of public life from such an early age, and how do you carry on a legacy of someone that has truly become a legend. We'll be right back after this quick break. We want you all to stick and stay. Don't stray away. You are watching The Female Solution, and this is the On Air Daily News Hour. And our guest today is Yvette Moyo, publisher of the South Side Drive. So we'll be right back after this quick break. So stay with us.
Leaders of nonprofits empowering worlds. Let's go.
But the vision that God gave me, I felt that it was time for me to step out and work on the vision that God gave me.
We need look no further. We have a unique voice. We have a unique talent pool.
And we are back. You are watching The Female Solution. And tonight, this is the On Air Daily News Hour, where we give you a chance to take a look at the news from a different perspective, from those who are giving you some upbeat information, some inspirational information, and maybe some mind-changing information that might make you think about the world a little differently. Well, tonight we have Yvette Moyo, who is publisher of the South Side Drive, and this special commemorative edition of Reverend Jesse Jackson really gives us some insight into the life of a man that has truly changed the world. So as you talked to the siblings and took a look at the family life, were there some things that you were surprised to discover? And were there some things that they shared that perhaps they hadn't really talked about before?
Well, actually, one of the things we did was to respect the privacy of the family. So we had already done some interviewing, and we'd also already done some special salutes to some of Push's activities. So it was easy for. And actually in October, we published a digital issue of Southside Drive magazine that was for Reverend Jesse. On the cover, it was for Reverend Jesse L. Jackson's birthday, and that was October. We did not print printed issue, so some of the articles we had done were from the heavily researched and placed here, and so some of so we did not disturb the family's privacy during that time to ask them any questions about his life. I think those of us who were around the movement have enough reverence to have that kind of respect and still let them know, that we're going to do something.
Yes. And, I think that's an important point to make, because there are certain levels of sensitivity that some people may not have. They just assume, oh, well, you're famous, you're well known, you can talk to me, stick a microphone in your face at a very inappropriate time. So, they came forward, the members of the family came forward when they decided it was appropriate to speak to the media, speak to the press. And of course, they had the big press conference out in front of the house before all of the homegoing ceremonies to just really kind of set a precedent. And I think the media team they put together was excellent in terms of making sure that people didn't cross boundaries, because it's so easy for members of the media to just dismiss your emotions, your privacy, and everything else, just assuming that you should always be ready to talk just because you're in the news and you should just, we're in the network and you stick a microphone in your face. How do you feel? Look, people,
and we're here in Chicago. We live this. So in a way, the issue was also a gift to the family. We have some truth and some truth writing and some perspectives of people who were there, because there's going to be a lot of afterthought and self-compassion for being there. And this, what I found, you were saying, what did we find out on the way to doing the issue? I think that everybody had a story about Reverend Jackson helped them if they're a certain age. And if it wasn't personal help, it was help for somebody's business, or help to get a job, or a way to fight some type of injustice. And it wasn't many people that were hesitant to that, and we knew who they were, so we knew that what they were going to see was what they were going to write would be based on scholarship, not on an opinion.
Yes. And that's one thing that was also apparent. And I'm grateful that you had archived issues to bring forth the article, I believe written by Salim Muwakil, who, long time journalist, WVON and all of that had that historic perspective as well. But
and those of my publisher's message about growing up at a business with a Black business magazine, and when it came time to really look at the statistics on what we were purchasing, our buying power, participation by corporations and companies, Reverend Jackson took that information, and some of it was industry publications that we gave him, sat down together, figured out some things with Ed Reddick, who was a brilliant,
one of my favorite people in the whole world. Ed Reddick. Yes, such a brilliant mind. Yes,
they were a team, and Reverend Jackson could travel, could study, could be in the media. There was a foundation, and there's a foundation being built there now. Then the foundation is already there, that's being uplifted to even a higher level with people that are young and ready to help create the solutions. And what people should understand, you got to go somewhere in a time like this to where people solution, because there's so much erroneous information. There are so many people who don't care about really providing you with anything of value, that you got to go where people are. And I believe that I see more and more young professionals that push every week. I see more and more young ministers, and we definitely need the spiritual base. And not only ministers, people from all walks of life and all areas religion come to push, because there is some history and legacy there with every one of the denominations. If there has been some injustice, Reverend Jackson had involved himself in that. And I think that comes across in the magazine, that it does.
Oh, yes. And it's interesting that, especially you kind of realize that the funeral, everybody had a Reverend Jackson story. Everybody had a story about how he helped them, how he came, spoke up for them, how he helped their business. It's just so many people. And this is one thing that I want young people to really grasp. the things that they take for granted, the access to education, and the Push Excel program helped so many young people get through college, get to college, get access to even thinking about going to college, because they did the annual tours to all the historically Black colleges and universities. So many people who are now professionals that they have to say that Reverend Jesse Jackson played a major role in their success. So many people that said they had low self-esteem until they came to their school and did the I am somebody chants and all of that. So many people that have a story of how he touched their lives. And this is why this commemorative edition is important. And I would like to see it even be in the schools, because there are many schools that they really don't have a strong history program that connects students with current political activities, the current conditions, the current struggles, so that they're not making the mental connection between what they're experiencing now and what Reverend Jackson fought for, what that whole era was about in terms of access to information, access to education, access to the equal financial resources for our schools. So much of what young people now are enjoying came from those fights, those battles. And I remember the battles about the Willis wagons. I believe we had that. This is one of those articles in there. I grew up in school, going to school in a Willis wagon. They didn't want Black children to spread out to the surrounding areas, so they tried to keep them contained in these little trailers.
Yeah, a trailer. Yeah. And that's where we were. Yeah. When from 5th grade, 6th grade is going to be the trailer,
Yes, I remember what was I, 2nd, 3rd grade in the trailer, and then finally, and I remember the protests in the schools, the boycotts and all of that. I mean, there had to be a fight to keep us from being abused in the public school system. Yes. So this was a large part of Reverend Jackson's legacy.
That it's still a fight, that it is still a fight. And there need to be, 50,000 Reverend Jesse L. Jacksons out there on the street, particularly at a time like this. What made him different, and I think another discovery, which wasn't new for me, but we have called him Reverend L. Jackson through the magazine because he was a reverend, and because there was a spiritual base in almost everything he said. He tied in scripture to it, and somehow we must include that the spirit. What keeps you going is the spirit, and I hope that you'll see the spirit. He keeps recreating things, inventing things. That's another revelation. Man, he came up with a lot of things because a lot of people approached him with a lot, and he responded. And most of the time, it was someone calling for help.
Yes, a lot of people called for help, and when it came down to those international rescues, bringing people from overseas, bringing hostages home, I think a lot of people, they tend to see us as local. And then when he made it clear that an African American can be an international leader, an international figure, and affect global politics, that
with
helped
humanity,
move the spirits in our minds.
And with humanity.
Okay. You can bring peace, and everything is not a war strategy. Everything doesn't involve killing. There are ways that you can negotiate. And I've heard
that's a legacy. That's right here.
That is a legacy, being able to
not go to war.
Definitely.
To defend. To global. And then when you talk about, one of the good news things in the magazine was the ballot from a diploma to a ballot, where there's legislation in the state so that every graduate would have a degree. And that is the Jesse Jackson bill. And so this, how he's being commemorative. Yeah, that's on, it's actually the Harold Washington Legacy Foundation that also has done voter registration related things and presented this to um, Welsh at the state level. And it's House Speaker Emmanuel Welsh has endorsed it for the bill to be an actual bill called the Reverend Jesse Jackson bill that would allow all high school graduates to have
It's
a
powerful because he always talked about a diploma in one hand, a voter registration card in the other. We're going to
Yeah.
take another break, and when we come back, I'd like to take a look at what that could mean for future generations once that bill is passed, and how do we go about educating young people so that they recognize the power of their vote. And did we see maybe a little bit of voter apathy in this election? And if so, why? Well, we'll take a look at that when we come back. And if you are watching, you may certainly join us. Give your comments online. We'll be sure to share them with our audience. And if you want to call in, we'll put the number on the screen, 727-731-5192, because we always like to hear from you. And we will be right back after this quick break. So stick and stay. Don't stray away. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
Peace and love. I'm Michelle Renee, host of Education Nation, live on the Female Solution Global Network every second and fourth Sunday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. The intention of Education Nation is to raise awareness about the literacy crisis and to offer information to combat the problem. The goal is to awaken an army of reading coaches and mentors. You will experience guests who are doing their part in the community to ensure youth in their circles are reading and thinking critically. I look forward to serving you in this capacity. Literacy is freedom, and Education Nation will offer information and strategies to help ensure our young people stay free.
Great day. It's your girl Asada here to introduce a new female solution show called Asada Says. That's right. Every month we're going to talk about everything I am, from cryptocurrency and financial security to good health and parenting strategies. Come on and talk with me every Tuesday morning from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And let's do that thing the way Asada says it should be done. See you then. Peace, right here on the Female Solution.
Yes, and we are back, and you are watching the Female Solution Global broadcast, and this is the on-air daily news hour. And we like to bring you some of the news from those news affiliates that are giving you something to think about that can expand your mind and give you a positive view of reality and what's happening in our world. Well, today we're looking at the commemorative edition of the South Side Drive, published by none other than Yvette Moyo. And this commemorative edition, featuring Reverend Jesse Jackson, gives us a real appreciation of a life well lived, and definitely one that has made an impact on so many people especially in the area of politics. It's been said over and over and over that what led to our finally receiving our first African American president was as a result of the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson and the result of his work in changing the laws so that the votes, the electoral votes, would be counted and not just a winner take all kind of situation as it had been. So, as a result of his work, Barack Obama had enough votes for him to, in fact, take the White House. So, this was a very powerful thing to have happened, and laws can change conditions, especially when they lead to more voters and voters who are perhaps making a difference in the outcome of an election. So in this edition, you mentioned the upcoming legislation that will hopefully be passed and encourage young people to participate as soon as they become eligible to vote, as soon as they turn 18 and are granted a voter registration card, if this bill passes. So it will definitely matter, especially because sometimes young people are discouraged and don't feel like politicians listen to them. What did you observe about this past election? I know there a lot of people came out for early voting, but what I saw was some of the older voters, the traditional ones, a lot of senior citizens came out, but I wasn't seeing a lot of the, say, under 30 crowd. What did you observe about that? And how do you hope this bill will maybe change the tide of that?
Well, one of the things we know with the magazines focusing on the community issue is that we know how important the vote was in opening doors, not only for President Barack Obama, to be elected, but for us to see ourselves in a whole different way. And also for the members of Congress be where they are and growing. It's so many things. Leave it to, wouldn't have happened if it wasn't his work. President Barack Obama wouldn't have been made it. I think it's more than that. He opened some doors and some possibilities and created some excitement about the possibilities for the future. And I believe that young people haven't felt that, but perhaps with the legislation that they could get their voter card earlier, perhaps they could at that time that they can actually change things. That what they see that's unfair, unjust, can be changed if they get together and are able to communicate and to penetrate these systems with their spirit, with what they want. Then there is a bright future. That's what I'm hoping people will get. What I observed from this election is that it wasn't enough enthusiasm and a lot of confusion in terms of communication. And I think that people became so confused and the messaging became so vicious that young people might not have a taste for that.
Yes. Yeah, I do believe they're not, they get turned off by the
Yes.
viciousness And unfortunately, that's kind of what we tended to see. So I am hoping that there will be a change in attitude as younger people choose to get involved in politics and choose to run for office. I
Yes,
think empowering them will definitely make a difference.
yes, and being enthusiastic in our conversation with them about what the possibilities are for them. That we need their cheer, their focus, their vision. We need that, and we welcome it. I think maybe more than worrying about it, we should welcome it.
Absolutely. So
And back
I,
that.
I
Oh
did
yeah.
notice that there were, a few races where, the some of the the old candidates did choose to step aside and, allow for
Yes.
someone to, take the baton and run with it. I saw that LaShawn Ford won in the 7th Congressional District, and Danny Davis had heavily endorsed him. So, we feel it'll be a smooth transition there.
Yes.
And then, of course, there was the Senate race, which I think that this was historic, having a woman. Well, of course, we've had Carol Moseley Braun, who um, set a precedent in terms of history, but now we've got Juliana Stratton, who is now the Democratic nominee, and we hope will ascend to the position of senator in the U.S. And I think every time someone gets elected, that perhaps gives a little more incentive for younger people to toss their hat in the ring, or at least get involved in someone's campaign so that they understand how the political system works. But in chronicling this and making sure that young people realize that there is legislation that's going to empower them and encourage them to get involved early, what would you like to see in terms of more young people involved in politics as a result of understanding how powerful their vote is, and the whole legacy of changing laws so that we have access to the ballot? What would you like to see in terms of a shift in the political uh, landscape, especially since in decades past, it was the young people who led the movement. It was the 18-year-olds. They were the ones doing the sit-ins and the marches and so forth. So what would you like to see in terms of a resurgence of youthful involvement?
I would like to think that maybe we shouldn't call it a resurgence. Maybe we should find it, because I'm sure it's happening. We sound like old people giving up on young people. It's different for that generation, and I'd like to see someone from that generation um, galvanize people and begin to get them involved. Um, Maybe there's an underground message. Maybe there's an underground message of goodness that we aren't seeing. That's what I hope and pray for. I encourage people. Maybe they can't. Maybe they can't be who they are out loud. I know Chicago Votes did a great job. I thought they would have, that it would have been different. But I think we have to show some compassion and uh, and speak, powerfully, because it's time. This is a critical time, and I don't know how to express that to young people than for other young people to carry that message.
Yes. And I've run into a few young leaders I think that could perhaps have a political future. Sometimes sometimes the elders don't want to let go of the seeds of power, but sometimes they do realize it's time to pass the baton. It's time to
I think it's
be the elder statesman and the advisor, and let a person, let someone who is younger and more vibrant go ahead and assume that position.
it's not an easy thing. It's like being a CEO of a company. It's your baby. It's your identity. And so it's not just mean and selfish. It's like I know so much, and I did hear Claiborne, Congressman Claiborne from South Carolina, talk about being 85 and vibrant. And, that's great if you are, but let us see that second person. Let us see the LaShawn Ford behind you,
Yeah.
every step. We already know, we should already know. And I really want to already know that there's a young person.
Yeah. Who are you mentoring? We want to see you preparing someone.
Yeah, a couple of them that you roll with, all the time. And I know that I know that would be a difference. And I know that we can't always judge. The numbers for the election certainly said something, but we can't say that they aren't thinking and aren't compassionate. My granddaughter, they're seeing that their future is jeopardized by craziness happening on another level.
Yeah.
But look at God's timing, that he would have this occasion be happening, a man's life of compassion and peace and compromise and, spiritual base, compassion, spirituality, religion lead him in everything that he does, as opposed to where we are with people that spew hatred, and disregard for people's lives. So at a time like this, spirit will come in. Your God, whoever you believe in, will reach in and say, this is going to change. So we have to pray. We have to continue to believe that in this case, Reverend Jesse Jackson's work was not in vain. I do say one more thing. We did these buttons called Jesse Craft. And we did them, actually, my guy, Daryl Holmes, who also has an article here in the magazine, grew up at Opera Bread Basket. Okay. And so when we talk about a Jesse Craft, a person that believes in humanity.
Wow, I love that idea, Jesse Craft. Well, I think that could really be catchy, and I think it defines a certain principle of living that we hope can translate into the political realm, so that we can get beyond just the Republican and Democrat, but what do you stand for in terms of spiritual principles? That's what matters. Well, we got to take one last break. When we come back, I'd like to take a look at that. And do we see the same spirituality injected into the politics? How are we helping young people to understand that's a critical part of the movement? It was the spiritual base. And how do we help them continue that when they get ready to do their protests and their marches and their gatherings? How do they keep the spiritual base that was the foundation of the movement? So definitely they have to learn that history. So we'll be right back after this last break, and we want you all to stick and stay. Don't stray away. We'll be back with Yvette Moyo and the Southside Drives Commemorative Edition for Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. We'll be right back, so stay with us.
brother, in which we're doing this documentary for, Douglas Robinson, Your Death Will Not Be in Vain.
He was a heck of a great dude. And I love Doug. Doug loved me.
Just being around him, he had a good spirit. He was a healing person.
They are there.
Get SROs back.
When you give to the poor,
Should not be forced out of their neighborhoods when it goes through a period of transformation.
Because there are too many people who are losing their homes to taxes because they can't pay a $1,000 tax bill.
Welcome to Master Force with Mushim Suit. Join us each week on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Central, live on Facebook and YouTube on the Female Solution page, as we dive into powerful topics designed to assist you in mastering your life force. Our conversations feature a diverse lineup of experts, all dedicated to your growth. Tune in weekly to discover new ways to elevate your spirit and raise your vibration. And remember, we are ascending.
Yes, we are ascending, and we are also adding your wonderful associate. Let me bring her in right now, Miss Emma Young. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Yes. I understand we have you to thank for this magnificent work that has been done, the Commemorative Edition.
It's a team.
That's right. Teamwork makes the dream work. So tell us, what was that process like? Naturally going into the archives, finding some articles, writing some articles, and being able to even be sensitive as to the time we're going through with the transition of Reverend Jackson. But what inspired you to put this edition together?
Well, of course, the fact of his joining the ancestors, we thought that this would be a time to do that. And, Reverend Jackson has been in our lives, in my life, and I'm sure in Yvette's for years. I mean, since the beginning. I remember I was working at the Chicago Urban League when Dr. King brought Jesse Jackson to Chicago, and they used to have cabinet meetings at the Urban League, and all the women would come out of their offices every Tuesday at 10:30 to see this fine young man with tight jeans and big fro. So, and then through the years, just have encountered him in various ways. I remember, being at Push when he said, I think the first time he did the I Am Somebody, and man, the way it made you feel, So,
yes. Yes, definitely. So one of the things that we took a look at is how over time he evolved into this elder statesman person that was an advisor to so many of the young elected officials, those wanting to get into politics, those hoping to get elected to office, those who were looking for advice and wisdom. So what did you observe in terms of his evolution as a leader and as an influencer, and now someone who, as an ancestor, is part of history? But what did you observe in terms of how
You
he?
know, that's a good question, because you don't see a huge, visible evolution, because he was so brilliant at a very young age. He was 25 years old.
Wow.
When he did the boycotts that caused the supermarkets to start hiring people, and Coca-Cola to start distributing, hiring, Black distributors. And so I think, in terms of evolution, I think the need evolved, and he evolved with that need, when, like freeing hostages, globally. He was there for the needs, I think.
Yes, definitely. And I think that the young people are going to get an opportunity to really appreciate what his life meant. And thank both of you for the work that you've done in putting together this commemorative edition. I've had requests for it. So is there a way that schools can get copies or get more copies? How do people get it so that they can have that commemorative edition and use it as a teaching tool?
Well, we're online at Southside Drive Mag, MAG, as for magazine.com. And our articles are published on the. We did a special run of more issues, and we're almost out, but we will take requests, and that should be sent to publisher at southdrivemag.com.
So that is Southside Drive dot
Mag.
Southside Mag.
Southside Drive Mag.
Southside Drive Mag.
That's what reminder is a magazine.
Okay. SouthsideDriveMag.com.
Yes.
All right. We will put that up on the screen so that people can order their copies and can save them for their children, because we believe that our young people need this history. And so we want you to go to Southside Drive Mag.com. Southside Drive Mag.com.
If you want to request some issues or something special, at SouthsideDriveMag.com. We'll do that for an email.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And thank you, Emma, for joining us. And
I'm so sorry I was late.
Oh, no, you were perfect. What you said was
right
perfect.
on time. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity. We really.
Well, we look forward to having you back as you all continue to produce outstanding magazines that give us in-depth coverage and insight on these historic times we're living in. We thank you so much for lending your expertise and insight and imagination to the publishing business so that we have a document that we can save for all time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nice.
And you all come on back tomorrow on the Female Solution. We've got Master Force coaching with Mushem Sut. So join us. And until that time, we want you all to continue to shine your light. We've come to the end of our show today. If you missed any broadcasts, go to our website for the audio and video archives at www.thefemalesolution.com.
On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussions. And to our global family joining us from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, xie xie. India, dhanyavad. Japan, arigato. Korea, kamsamnida. Russia, spasiba. Germany, danke. Poland, dziękuję. France, merci. Spain, gracias. Italy, grazie. Egypt, shukran. Ghana, madasi. Nigeria, eshe. South Africa, Ngiyabonga. Senegal, Jaref. Kenya, Asante. Israel, Toda. Pakistan, Shukriya. Afghanistan, Tashakur. Saudi Arabia and Palestine, Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you, and may peace be upon you and the mercy of God and God's blessings.